Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Fotografiska Berlin, the contemporary museum of photography, art, and culture. Last night, we held an inspiring talk of one of our exhibiting artists, Juliana Huxtable, and tonight we'll have opportunity to get a more deeper insight into the work of some of our exhibiting artists who are the part of the group show NUDE, The Naked Body in Contemporary Photography. NUDE was curated in 2021 by our in-house curators, Johan Wickner and Thomas Schaefer. They are somewhere here. Say hi. This show was already shown in our museums in Stockholm and in New York. I'm thinking about Shanghai. And we are very happy to host this very important exhibition in Berlin that brings together 30 female and female identifying artists together who are talking about their personal stories and bringing their understandings about the nudity, naked body, and body politics. They are coming from different cultural perspectives, and they are challenging already established traditional and patriarchal norms, and they are reverting the positions of the power. It's our great pleasure that tonight we have 4 of our exhibiting artists on the stage: Evelyn Bencicova, Denisse Ariana Pérez, Angélica Dass, and Julia SH. The panel will be moderated by visual artist, writer, and curator Moshtari Hilal, who is based in Hamburg and Berlin. Moshtari studied Islamic studies and political science with a focus on gender and decolonial theory in Hamburg, Berlin, and London. She is a co-founder of the collective AVAH, Afghan Visual Arts and History, and the research project CCC, Curating Through Conflict with Care, as part of the NGBK in Berlin. Hilal's essayistic debut book, Hässlichkeit, or Ugliness, is actually published this month by Hanser in Berlin, and tomorrow Moshtari will have a premiere at the International Literature Festival in Berlin. Hilal describes her artistic practice as reconciling with shame and negated beauty, and seeks to understand and critique power and colonial continuities in visual culture. Her practice is informed by self-portraits and informal family archives, which she employs in eclectic ways in her search for a visual language. Please welcome Moshtari and our artists.
Thank you for this really nice introduction. So everyone gets to know my work, but I'm going to do it differently on stage tonight, because I actually like it when artists also introduce themselves and their work, and also in response to the theme and the question that we came up with for tonight. And the theme is Bodies Beyond Nakedness, because when I thought about the nude, I was wondering, how does it differ from the naked body? Like, if we just all undress tonight on stage, is it a nude or is it just us being naked? So this is going to be one of the bigger questions we try to respond to. What do we actually mean with nude, and how do you feel being part of this group exhibition that is titled Nude? But before we do that, I prepared like terms or descriptions of your work, and I'm going to throw them into the panel, and you can all respond whether you agree with my perception of your work, but also show us a little bit. Maybe some of you already went to the exhibition and have an idea of their artistic work. Maybe you don't, so I think it would be interesting to have an actual look here on the screen. And so yeah, let's start with Denisse. Denisse, with you, we changed the order again. Sorry, there was a mix-up with the PDF. Okay, Angélica, perfect, because this is the original order I came up with, so I'm really happy to stick to that one. Because your work, when I told you why I wanted to start with you, I said because it's so different than the rest of the work, and you were like, why different? And I think it's your process. It's the way you invite people to participate in your work that I found very interactive and educational. And when I tried to look at your work, I felt like you're breaking down the political terms we attach to skin color, or the political discussion when we have about race and skin, and you're like breaking it down into more depth, nuance, and complexity. And I would love to hear from you if you agree with that perception of mine, and also how would you describe your work?
I think that maybe the best way to answer is exactly what we will decide, that show a little bit the reason why, and in the end, what I'm trying to do with these colorful photos. So I will jump to the PowerPoint. It's hard to be the first one. Sorry. Well, the work that I will present is called Human Eye. And what I'm trying to do with this work, as you can see more or less by my accent, I'm a Brazilian, born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, based in Spain. I'm someone that's African descendant, Arab descendant, native indigenous. So I always explain that all the colors of my work you can see in my Christmas dinner. So what I do in this work, as someone that was born in Brazil, that I don't know if you know this information, was the last country to abolish the trade of human beings from the African continent. This was in 1888. So as you can imagine, the one that's one enslaved in the 19th century just continued to be serving in the 20th century. And now, in the 21st, someone like me can talk about it. So what I do in this work is that I take a picture in a white background. I choose a square of 11 pixels from the nose, I paint the background, and I put the corresponding color of industrial palette colored Pantone. For the ones that don't know, this is just a language of color. If I'm speaking about the blue, which blue? I'm talking about the sky, the sea, of a butterfly. So what I'm trying to prove is that what I learned when I was a child, that people are black and white, it's a lie. Race is a social construction, even if I experience racism every day. So, there is people that know that this is my father, and I really look like him, and she is my grandmother. So that is the reason why I explain that the whole spectrum of my work can be in my dinner. And you can see this. So this is a work that starts in this space. That is the white box, that is the museum, the gallery. But I have to tell you that I find the perfect place, you see in a moment, but just let me make a pause. In this exhibition that is the American Museum of Natural History, I love when my work is connected with science, because it's not about me, it's really proof that it's about us. So I love this text. Eyes, hair, skin, humans are wonderfully colorful, but skin color has been misused to separate people into races, and attitudes toward the race have long been used to justify discrimination, segregation, and genocide. In fact, people are 99 genetically identical. We all share the same ancient ancestors, and of course, we are the same species. I love being in science museums. It's not about me, it's really about us. So the place that I really love is being in the street, because this kind of thing happen. You have these students search for themselves, put this conversation that is inside of the world of art, inside of the white box, has to be in the street. It's really about us. And this kind of thing also happened. He is a person that don't believe that he belongs to the place that is the museum, and being in the street brings him also to this discussion about who we are and our identity. And I always insisted, we were speaking in the beginning about political, and this is in the World Economic Forum. And 2017 was the first time in the history that instead of just have the green wall and flags, you have a lot of people to remind our leaders who they are serving, and that the world that we are living is as diverse as my images. This is in Habitat 3. That's another meeting of United Nations that speak about the future of the cities, because we can have a world with cities that are ghettos. A little bit in numbers about this work. I have 4,756 portraits that I take in 2060 countries, 36 different cities all over the globe, from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to Daegu in South Korea, in Paris, in the headquarters of UNESCO, but also in shelters, well, in the African continent, in the United States, or whatever. So a lot of places all over the globe, and I was not able to find any human beings that fits in the black and white. And to tell you the truth, maybe the most important information you will find in my photos is exactly the lack of information. Any information you put in these images just belong to your own stereotypes. What we can do to change that? And one of the things that happen all the time in this work is exactly this. You have people that has exactly the same color. I did the portrait exactly the same way. And you see that they have exactly the same color, but their life experiences are completely different because of the concept of race. So one of the things that I learned is that if race is a social construction, I can try to deconstruct that using art. And I think that the way that I can do that, and we will see the end, is exactly that, jumping from the wall of the museum to the classroom. So I work with kids all over the globe using exactly the same materials, primary colors, along with the black and white. And I can assure you that we are able to create absolutely all colors that we have in this room. This is the important information for these kids. We come from the same material, even if each one of us will be unique and different. So as you can see, this is the process. This is a school in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. Their self-portraits are much more interesting than any photo that I can take. And the most important thing, how we can make them really the leaders, because we all speak about the new generations as the one that will make the change, which tools we are giving them. And so this is one of the things that I try. So we do public installations the same way that I do in my exhibitions. They are responsible to really put that in the street and invite their community to really think that this thing about black and white, it's a lie. There is no such a thing as one crayon that's called flash tone. This is a project that I did in Chile with UNESCO, and we work with 75,000 kids all over the country, more than 1,600 schools. Because the goal is that I will never be able to portray the billions inhabitants of the planet, but I really think that we can use photography as a tool to provoke the discussion all over the globe and with all levels and all ages. So I think that, I hope I was able to answer you.
So Julia, now it's your turn. So when I looked at your work, and I was reminded of Renaissance paintings, and I feel like your work is actually, it is photography, but it's aiming to be in real competition to paintings. And sometimes if you look at it, you can't even focus on the body. You feel like you're looking at a shape or a landscape or color. Do you feel like this is matching your intention to do photography, but in a Renaissance aesthetic?
I think the body for me is basically an art material, and this really has to do with the fact that I went to art school. I have an MA in art, but I can't do shit with my hands. Like, I can't sculpt. I would love to have been a sculptor. So this was like a happy medium that I found photography. I would say I work with a lot of underrepresented body types in my work. And I do this because in the United States where I live now, I'm originally from Sweden, whatever sexuality and nudity that is usually permitted is shown in a very sexual context. And I think this contributes to this perception that we're looking at the body of, and just looking at bodies like they are either sexual rivals or potential sexual partners. And I think this is kind of a harmful way to look at bodies in general. And I think exhibiting in a museum is one of the few places where this is not the norm, that we can actually show nudity in a very different way. Just like I don't think anyone is like mad about Rubenesque paintings and whatever else. So, and I'm hoping by framing my models as works of art that we can kind of let the spectators suspend their judgment whether they find their bodies socially acceptable or sexually attractive. I should probably show some more slides here. And I think also throughout art history, the spectator has derived a lot of, power and pleasure from a passive female form, while I feel like I'm using the sometimes passive female form as exactly the opposite. It's not inviting the spectator, it's not using the spectator to become anything, it doesn't ask for permission, and it doesn't really have to be achieving anything. So yeah, my bodies tend to be very sculptural in my work, and I'm really just making art to feel more comfortable also in my own skin and treat myself with kindness. And I'm hoping that hopefully by framing my models this way, then anyone can feel the same way about my subjects, and hopefully they can also feel that kindness toward themselves. So that would be a lovely thing if that happened. So yeah.
Thank you. Denisse. So
Hello.
hello. So when I looked at your work, I was seeing a portrait, a cohesive portrait that you put together portrait by portrait. So in a way, it was also a portrait of a culture, of a community. And I was wondering if you are creating a series that is maybe never ending and that is growing with each portrait that you're going to take in the future.
So the question is if I'm creating let's say a long-term, not like endless series of portraits. Maybe. I see myself as a people photographer. I think people are at the epicenter of my work, even when I'm very inspired by nature, but it's always in relationship to people. And I am quite obsessed with observing human beings. I think we have such a unique, complex human experience, and I'm always fascinated to learn more about it. And photography allows me to get closer, to find beauty. I'm very driven by beauty, not superficial beauty, but in reminding people of the beauty that exists within themselves. And yeah, so I think I will never stop doing that. So maybe, yes, I'm working on a never-ending series of portraits, because I think I will always be obsessed by people and the human experience, and how to, in some way, try to capture them. So
I would like to see some.
yes. So my introduction will be rather a quick one because I have a video in the end to show you. So I will speed up to show you some still images and quickly say that, hi, I'm Denisse Ariana Pérez, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist working as a copywriter, photographer, and film director. And my work is a mixture of aesthetics, portraiture, culture, and social awareness, a blending of fantasy and reality. So here are some of the works that you will see in the museum, and they were part of the first NUDE exhibition. But in this rendition of the NUDE exhibition, I will be showing a short film, but I just wanted to also show some still imagery as well. Another thing is that most of the people that I photograph are not models. They are real people I usually find on the street. So they are posing for the very first time, a lot of them. And I wanted to bring that up because for me, photography is a way of taking people into a process. It's like half a meditation session and half a photography session. I want to get close to people, I want to breathe with them, and I want them to let go of themselves. So I just wanted to give you some context into the photographic work. And now I'm going to show the video that is on display in the NUDE exhibition.
Historically, meaning throughout the course of modern history, Black bodies have been limited, reduced, diluted to one-fit-all generalized descriptors, a sweet, elegant euphemism to say stereotypes, but Black bodies are nothing but multi-shape, multi-hue, multi-marvelous. Black bodies are magical, mystical, spiritual, mystically spiritual. They carry secrets and stories. They store rhythms and hymns. They are lyrical, symphonic, poetic, poetically lyrical and lyrically poetic. They are slow and soulful and rapid locomotion. If language has any relevance whatsoever, then let's use it to rewrite the way things have been written. A poetic lesson on Black anatomy, a rewriting of the Black body. Now, welcome to the stage. The Black spine, the tallest, sturdiest infrastructure ever built. Carrier of strength, pain, and legacy. Carrier of others who have needed carrying. Black ice. Far-seeing portals that can read through the subliminal, the unsaid, the unspoken. Black ears, receptors of cadence and confessions, nooks of compassion that welcome the other and their heartfelt message. Black hands. Black hands are chains. Chains of love, unity and loyalty. They are bridges that pulse in synchronicity. Black shoulder, a hill
Stop here.
the top of which to
Thank
feel
you.
safe, embraced,
So
cared.
to So if they want to watch the whole thing,
Yeah, if they want to watch the whole thing, if you want to watch the whole thing, then you can go to the third floor and watch it.
thank you for the insight into your work. Actually, while we were watching the film, I was thinking how we covered now the nuances of skin color, body politics, reimagined as paintings and anatomy, and then coming to your work, Evelyn, that is a little bit different because it's going for me in the sphere of a mental image. Like when I looked at your work, I saw the nude on the surface, but somehow it also went under the skin. That was the term that I had for you in my mind. Are you building a mental image with your nude bodies?
First of all, it's really a pleasure to be on stage with all of you and explore your works and also in front of all of you. And yeah, when we spoke, I really liked your question or like kind of thought and this way of looking at my work, because this, I think, is exactly what I'm trying to do in different topics, to more find the form for the idea, because I think images, artworks are the way how we can capture attention of people to kind of dive deeper into questioning or contemplation. So this is exactly how I'm often working. And for example, in this work created with NS Gucci, and the next one also, and then I will come to the work which is showcased here at Fotografiska. What is interesting, I actually didn't prepare a presentation, I did it very fastly now, but only a few minutes I realized none of the images, even though I'm a photographer, is a photograph. So even the body itself is created, sized, and placed in order to support the idea. For example, in this work, it was about kind of how we create different versions of ourselves as people, as artists, how we often create kind of ideas of ourselves that are bigger than we are, overgrow us, how we compare ourselves with that, or in another work, this created during COVID, dealing with intimacy. I will be very fast with this work. Of course, if you are curious about my, so this I've heard is going to take a while. So just very shortly, because I want to focus maybe more on the work that is shown here, which is, I think, really doing that, what you are trying to describe with this under the skin thought. This work, which you can see also inside of our NUDE exhibition, is called Ether or Eat Her. I often also, in a similar way, play with words. For me, words are something to be twisted, something to be changed, something to have multiple meanings, to be like ground for more thought. This work is being shown for the first time, and it's only the beginning of this whole cycle, which me and my collaborator, Samson G. Balfour-Smith, who also used my name Screen Noise, will continue. So it's also something which now in conversation with you, I'm gathering more information, impressions to put them in the work further. And this work, the basis for it was actually text. Part of it I wrote when I was maybe 14 or 16. I think it was somewhere between 14 and 16 in one of my hardest time in life so far. And I just returned to this text a couple months ago and just realized what way I came, for example, from that moment to now. And this text was about feeling very constrained in fear. And out of the sudden, I just felt need to continue in the text. And I wrote what is basically basis for this Ether video that you can see in the exhibition. And the whole imagery was kind of created to accompany the story. What we were trying to do with the images, or what the text is aiming for, was for me the retranslation of Genesis story, which is how Bible is starting, but as well it is the basis for other Abrahamic religions. It's the story of Adam and Eve in Eden, but as well the story of original sin, which is not only connected to the idea of nude, which is also topic, or nakedness, nudity, but also when you look at the story, it is towards the disobedience of a certain rule, but most interesting for me, seeing the curiosity as some form of guilt or something negative, especially when is it performed by women. And myself, I grew up in the background, quite Christian background in Slovakia. And I grew up with these ideas, but when I was growing up, I realized this is going much further than this Genesis story. It's going much further than the actual religious belief. It's applied on the society and in the ways how we see shame, guilt, our own bodies, and also the role of females still today. So what I started to do was actually looking at this story in this chapter, looking at the different meanings of the words. Because what I thought was, I was not sure if this, or no one is sure, if this story was, how this story was created, even though it's in many cultures, but maybe the part that is harmful is how it was translated or understood or interpreted. And in the work, I try to reinterpret it in different way, which actually could be the correct way because it's taking only the different meanings of the original words. And how this translation is supposed to work, it's the story of empowerment through knowledge and freeing oneself through this mystical fall in a way. So I think it's all about kind of a feeling, which is in the work represented by this body, by the avatar Eve, which is taking my body form in a way. It's modeled according to me, but it represents something much bigger than myself, something we are still dealing with. And in the video, which I would invite you to view either today or during the exhibition, as well as work of all the other artists, Eve has to go through many different levels of kind of freeing herself, unchaining herself, not only from this patriarchal oppression, but also on a lot of constraints we actually put on ourselves, according to what we were taught, what we learn, and what we need to unlearn in a way. And I think you mentioned it too, or it's mentioned in the video, this kind of rewriting or retelling things in our understanding. I would say this is present in the whole exhibition, even redefining what nude is or could be.
Thank you.
So I would play just a little part of the video, which is normally 20 minutes.
So spoke serpent, the goddess spoke of pharmaca, poison, antidote, but also a cure. Conscious curse. If you choose to taste it, bite it, to know, don't mind the taste. This is the truth.
Thank you.
Now that we have a better understanding how different working with the nude can look like, and also for me in preparation for this panel, it really expanded my idea of the nude, because when I was asked to do this, to work on this panel, to moderate it, I was wondering like why, because I didn't consider my work relating to any of it. Of course, it's relating, and you know, I'm exploring the body, hair, the self-portrait, the nose, but I never considered it to be nude or related to it. But now that I've seen your work, I mean, you haven't even showed a naked body at that. I mean, the portraits are ending at the shoulder,
Nobody's
right?
naked in human eye, I promise you. Kids always ask that question. Everybody's naked? No, nobody's naked.
And that's why, you know, like I was wondering, is the face at least naked at in your work? Like, do they wear makeup? Is it important for you to have a bare face?
I think that first, nobody's naked, but I think that most of the people, they are nude because as our open calls, they have no idea who will come to the studio, and they have any deep connection with the work that makes them be part of that, and it can be a story that's similar to mine or someone that wants to position as a lie. So there are these 15 minutes that I really ask, why are you here? You know what I will do with your photo, put in the middle of the street, why you want to join this crazy idea? And this is the moment that people put themselves in this vulnerable position to tell the story behind. So I think that this is the point of nude and not naked. And that is one thing that I try to have most of the people without makeup. I want to really celebrate this beauty that is natural and that for me it's true. But one of the things that happened that sometimes people just came and they came full of makeup, and I always take the picture because I think that the intention of be part of this work is more important even of my own desires as photographer. So I take the picture, and of course I always give them everybody the image. But I have to tell that for installation, for exhibition, as part of the celebration about who we are as human beings, is being without makeup. Wearing glasses is a privilege. So there are people on this planet that can have glasses or even makeup. So this is one of the things that I try to really level everybody so everybody at the same level with less things as possible, to make you not be sure if the person that I portrayed is someone that is a refugee that just arrived in Italy or someone that I portrayed in a TED conference that's a billionaire.
And this is a question that I'm posing to all of you. Have you considered the term nude for your work before this group exhibition? Because it's not for the first time on display. So how is your journey with that term?
For me personally, I don't see my work as nudes. I see them as portraits, first and foremost. And I think a lot of times the nudity is emphasized by the spectator, it's not by me. It's like an imposed term. And it's a reflection of many times if the first thing that somebody sees in a picture is the nudity, then I think that tells more about that person than about whatever else is in that image. So I think it's still a large conversation to have, how comfortable are people with the nude body or the semi-naked body. Because in my pictures, I can count with one hand the ones that are fully naked and is usually disguised. A lot of them are portraits, they're abstract shots, and I never ask anyone, I always tell them, show me as much as you're comfortable showing me. For me, it's very important that the person is comfortable. If they are comfortable enough to take it all off, that is also their decision. And sometimes it's a process. They start with some clothes, and in the end, they end up taking it off. But it's also because we are going through a process. I shoot in analog, for example, and in that process, they cannot see the photo, and I cannot see the photo. So whatever happens is between us in that process. And for me, that's where the nudity happens. It's a process in which I hope that the person becomes very raw, very unaware. That's why I shoot them a lot, for example, in water, is for them to forget about themselves and their ego and how they're supposed to, to be portrayed in an image. I always ask them not to pose. And we go through movement and we breathe. And for me, that's where the nudity is. Photography for me is a process of proximity and letting go of ourselves or entering a new self or a new alter ego. But for me, that's where the nudity is.
Yeah, myself, I don't even think I use the term nude to describe my pictures, but there clearly are, I suppose. I just think it's the least interesting thing about them. When I think about the naked and the nude, I get the sense that the naked suggests that there's something lacking, and there's also an awareness that something is lacking. Like I imagine even in Eden going like, shit, I'm not wearing any clothes, like fuck. Like, this is a realization. Well, I think the nude is more a natural state of being and what presumably came before that awareness. But then again, as adults, I don't think we're also in a lot of environments that we can be nude or naked without there being any kind of judgment. I can only think of really sterile places, like you go to the doctor's office and maybe there's no judgment there really, but there aren't that many. And I was thinking about that now when I went to you have a fantastic spa here, make use of it, Bali Spa. This is like amazing, okay? Like there's gotta be some fans in here. And I had this thought experiment and like, do I feel naked or nude in here? But I'm from Sweden, so I'm always okay with nudity, so I just feel nude. But how you went there? How did you feel? Did you feel naked or nude?
No, I felt free, like myself. Like I was not conscious of my nudity when I was there. But that is me as an individual in my relationship with nudity. And I think it's a bigger question for every other person, how they feel in the presence of a naked body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be also totally dressed and feel naked or like exposed. I was also like listening to all of you. I don't think my work gets labeled as nude that much anymore, even though I think it's exposing a lot of insight in a way. But listening or like actually even contemplating about the title, I was thinking about the difference or definitions between these words, naked and nude. Because normally it's defined that the word naked, how we are naked at home when you wake up or go to shower, it's being oneself, being natural. Why nude is usually connected to portrayal, either in photography or what used to be painting. And I was interested in this difference that naked is being for oneself, while nude is being seen and shown for others. And when we think about this definition of a nude, what normally comes to our minds is definitely historical painting from the museum, and it always comes as an image of a woman. As an image of a woman which is kind of arranged for the spectator. And when I walk through the exhibition Nude, which was already presented in Fotografiska before, but this was the first time I could actually see it in person, it was kind of mind-blowing how it is very different, even though it still has the same form of naked bodies, but how this nude is presented, it's showing everything, not female body, just presented there for the pleasure of the viewer. I think it's showing also this nakedness, intimacy of female, male, non-binary bodies, and I think this exhibition is part of how even this word nude, I hope so, is going to be redefined.
It's actually interesting because I was trying to, remember all the adjectives or synonyms that we used for nude and naked here. Like, for example, we had natural, we had exposed, but then also the aesthetics that come along with that. I mean, for example, your work looks, both of your works look very sensual in a sense, but then there's also in the exhibition work that I would even see as erotic. So there is like this huge spectrum of what nudity or nakedness is. I was also wondering how your cultural contexts play into that. I mean, your upbringings, you all have different backgrounds, but also traveled a lot, showed your work in different contexts. And first of all, how maybe that your work is a response to that kind of upbringing, or maybe how your work changed in response to the reception and the context you have been showing the work. I want to give you a little bit context from my perception, for example. I grew up with a Muslim, I had a Muslim upbringing, so my cultural context is one where nudity started for me at my shoulder. Like I had to argue to show shoulder, like the armpit and the shoulder were very sexually charged, so that was already nudity. And that was already sexuality. So looking at, of course now, I'm much older than when I had these arguments, but still looking at these photos in the exhibition, I see the naked body and I cannot unsee it because it was such a challenge to get to the naked body in a sense. So how does it feel for you?
Start? We do in order, okay. Well, as someone that's born in Brazil and based in Spain, I think that when you were spoken about that, the funniest thing for me was the first time that I have to go to the beach in Spain, and I thought about the topless. Everybody think that in Brazil we all walk around naked. And it's not like that, I promise you. You can go to the beach in topless. So it's something that a police can come and say, hey, you are in topless in the beach. You can do that. But it was so normal in Spain. So it's, for me, it was very interesting. For example, just thinking about nudity. For this point of view, how people perceive my culture and how I was out of a lot of stereotypes that belong to what it means, nudity, be naked for me. And I think that in some way this is deeply connected with most of the work that I do, not just Human Eye, but other projects that are very connected to try to break stereotypes, to really try to rethink the way that we see the other and how people see what means me. And of course, the work that you see here just exists because I was born in Brazil. And I was just able to start that because I was living in Spain and I have the distance to really look through that violence that I experienced all my life, thinking that it's normal. And it was not. And I think that this is the truth.
I would say yes. Like I can see part of my work as an absolute rebellion against how I grew up, even though that I left quite young. But I was born in the Caribbean, in Dominican Republic, and it is also a paradisical place that people expect to be a postcard party with coconuts and like naked people, with voluptuous hips dancing on top of you. And it's a Catholic country. Like, it is not what you see at the beach when you go on vacation. It's a Catholic country that actually has a lot of kindness and a lot of conservative values. And where there's a lot of classicism and a lot of racism that is very internalized. So the fact that I've done a video called A Poetic Lesson on Black Anatomy, it is very, it's a big middle finger to the values of the society that I grew up in. And just like Angélica, my father is Black, my mom is white, but there's a lot of, I even questioned if I was allowed to make this film. Do I have the right? Am I Black enough to do this? You go through a full crisis internally, not a crisis, a caring for, am I entitled to? And I decided to do it, to interpret it through my own eyes. And in many ways, a lot of my work, you were talking about the nude being historically female. And I chose a lot of my photographic work is showing a lot of men, mostly men. And this is also going against macho culture that I grew up in. I was like, no, I grew up around men, brothers, a father that I love. And my work was a love letter to the kind of masculinity that I saw in my home. So that was very macho, but also I saw a lot of vulnerability that I could see through them. So a lot of my work is finding beauty in many of the things that I was never allowed to find beauty in. It's very rebellious, the fact that, for that context, even the fact that I'm wearing braids, this would have not been allowed in the private school I went to when I was little. Or that I went to Africa to shoot. My own father questioned me, why are you going to Africa by yourself? Are you crazy? And I knew I wanted to, and I wanted to portray it not in the way that I saw it in the news, but in the way that I wanted to see it. So yes, there's a lot of I guess, a big departure from those values. And when I see women in the nudes, this would have also not been allowed, but I always knew I had different values. I was a very precocious hippie, even in that environment. And I wanted to celebrate the freedom that I wish that more people would have in their naked bodies. Because I know in my blood what it feels like to feel very, to actually like really hate your body. And it's a rebellion against that imposition. So that's how I see it, a big rebellion against it in many ways.
Well, I spent my first 18 years in Sweden, and in the 80s and 90s, I mean, it's a very, I wasn't exposed to like a lot of exotic culture by any means. I mean, we were a very homogenous society, so I think it wasn't, and also like I was incredibly okay with who I was, and then I moved abroad and I realized there was this idea of shame that I hadn't been introduced to before. And I felt it a little bit when I went to school in England, realizing like being nude and naked and outgoing and touchy, huggy, feely was like culturally like not really as okay as when I grew up. And then in the United States, definitely not. I mean, this is a culture where it's completely okay to show the most graphic violence you can imagine, but God forbid there's a nipple. Like this is what we're arguing about right now. And so I feel my work is kind of a weird healing journey for myself as well, of reclaiming that kind of childish innocence I had that I feel is completely normal. And I understand that that's not the case in every culture, but like for me, of existing in my own weirdness it's just really nice. So especially in the United States, I was very fascinated with how I was now introduced to both like culturally different people, but also like body types I hadn't seen before. I mean, when I first photographed one of my models that you saw in my work here, I realized like, wow, a lot of the time, the biggest bodies in the room are also the most invisible. And having this conversation with these women were like incredibly like terrifying in some ways, hearing how they're treated all the time. But I also realized like how it's just absurd that they don't get to have a platform either, like that they're excluded from it. Like they can't just appear in a photograph without the subject being discussed. And I thought that was like ludicrous. Like this is not a conversation about fatness. This is the female form in a photograph to me. So I think it's not rebellion by any means, but I think it kind of manifests itself that way sometimes my work, because I feel like we have to kind of reclaim that the female form and just be okay in it. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to bring a little bit of like good old 83 Sweden to America.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like that we are all from really different cultures and countries and kind of norms in a way. I'm from Slovakia, and as I mentioned before, from like kind of deeply Catholic background, which of course influenced my view on my body or nudity. I had a really big problem with nudity. I couldn't be naked even in front of my partner, and I felt very, very ashamed. And what helped me actually was my work, kind of like exposing myself. I might mention it also later, in a performative way, and doing these steps, which seems so impossible. Like it almost feels like crossing a real wall. But it's something that when you cross this wall, you realize it's just imaginary. All this fear and all this impossible that is put into it, it's actually just in your mind. And exchanging with you or basically anyone, or moving to different country where people are different and either are very free-thinking or have been closed in a different room with the different rules. You kind of realize that some of these things that are set in stone or written in paper, and by that set in stone, are actually just a construct, which immediately when you try to understand it, you can deconstruct it very easily. This whole idea exactly of like normality, shame, perfection, etc. For me, of course, moving to Berlin is a difference, but even more, as I mentioned, I learned through the work exposing my own body and emotionality, because I think it can go hand in hand, but also working with people with different experiences. For example, there was very interesting project in collaboration with the Royal Opera House in London with dancers with Down syndrome. Their name is Culture Device. And we were working with them long term and portraying them. And they were doing their own version of Rite of Spring, and we knew all of them, and at the same time we were photographing them and also visiting their rehearsals. And on one floor, the regular dancers of Royal Opera House were training, and on another floor, there were the dancers of Culture Device. With totally different bodies, with totally different movements. And yeah, in this normality, what was upstairs with the professional ballet dancers, it would be considered the right dance. But actually the dance on the other floor was so full of life and kind of, yeah, like how we defined what is beautiful, what is powerful. It's, I think, a lot in like eye and mind of the beholder. And in the same way for us creators, also in what we show and like how we try to go out of our own like boundaries and reshape them.
You actually talked about something that I tried to ask in the next step. And before doing that, maybe again, a little context to my work, so you know why I'm asking that question. I work a lot with the self-portrait because I have also a lot of respect and also fear to work with the bodies and faces of others. I think there is a lot of responsibility, right, to point the camera, capture them, and create an image that is also staying and then also traveling around the world and being in exhibitions. And you can't, I mean, you can control taking the photo, but you cannot control who is looking at the photo. And in my work, I work a lot on ugliness, which is a violent and hurtful topic as well. So when I try to think or talk about the ugliness of others, I always put my own portrait or profile or face as a prototype into, for example, archival material, because I didn't want to reproduce what has been said before. So I'm scared of working with others, right? But you all do. So I'm really interested in...
You don't want to call anyone ugly, but you can call yourself ugly.
Yeah, because I think there's, I have a control over my feelings, and I cannot control how someone might feel in the process of working on difficult subjects. And so my question to you is, how is your process? How do you find your subjects, and how can you make them feel safe being naked in the literal sense sometimes, but also in an emotional sense in front of your camera? I mean, like, maybe we can start with you, Julia, because if I have seen correctly, you work only with others and not with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think, like you say, you can't control the outcome of your work, who might see it and how they might respond to it, et cetera, but you can control the experience. And like I said before, like, I don't even consider myself like a nude photographer, even though, sure, yeah. So I think what I can control is the way I work with models, and because I'm not out there like creating a nude image for the sake of nudity, I think we can both be on board with that and kind of go from there. I actually found
the majority of the models when I first started photographing larger bodies on American Craigslist. It's like amazing. I just did an open call at the time. But then I realized as soon as I photographed one or two people, there's a kind of a close-knit community among those women living in LA, and they kind of started reaching out to me, feeling like they had stories they really wanted to share. So just by actually photographing one person, because there's so little representation, it gave her such a platform to show her work that other people came to me, which is really nice. But yeah, I think how you conduct yourself is a big way of doing things. And I think if I work with myself as a subject, I think there'd be a level of, for myself, a level of performativity that would render the results quite ridiculous. Because I would love to think, even though I'm like, I think so highly of everyone I work with, thinking they're amazing and doing everything right. Like, I don't have the same kindness toward myself. I'm way too critical. And for that reason, I think my vanity would stand in the way of creating something that was, you know, genuine. But I have, you know, let other photographers photograph me in states of vulnerability just to kind of feel what that is like. And I have no problem doing it for someone else, but I am just my worst own critic, so I leave that to others.
But Evelyn, you used your own body, as you said, so you did both, right? Like, how was that, the difference?
Yeah, which is not normal for me also at all, because I photograph quite a lot with people, and yeah, it can be in a different ways. I also prefer to work with people either that I know or that I know can relate to the story. And I got this question asked a lot before if I did auto-portrait, self-portrait, and I always said, yes, all my work is a self-portrait, but it's not needed to show my face or body in order to be a self-portrait, because it has my soul in a way. It is inspired by what touches me. But I was thinking about it today, also with this work, seeing it as kind of first artwork where my body, it's not really my body, it's a model of my body, is used. And then it came to my mind that there was another work before this, which was not the artwork, it was more the form of exhibiting. But I came to it in my thoughts today because I think it's one of the things that has been very transformative to me, also with your previous question. This was in the project which is called Notes on Hysteria, which I shot some years ago. And it deals with the topic of hysteria, or more the ways of detecting it, curing it. If you are not familiar, hysteria is this term for non-existing disease that has been like present for very long time, but it was only attributed to women. And it has many kind of symptoms, like for example, passion or rage or depression. And the cures were usually forms of punishment or imprisonment. And most of my projects have a research process. And when I was doing research for this project, even though all of my artistic projects are personal, I suddenly feel something much stronger. When I was reading, I was literally crying and feeling like a physical pain or like very deep sorrow or like real like violence on my body. Which really surprised me. And then, after the photographs were already shot, which I shot with a friend of mine, Hazel Townsend, who is an actress from London, I got opportunity to show them in the mental hospital here in Berlin, which is transformed to a museum space. And I myself have a history with like mental institution. And when I was installing the works, because the topic of hysteria has been also used in photography, there have been pictures of a hysteric woman in their episodes, kind of maybe staged, sexualized. And when I was installing the work, I realized by being a photographer and just installing the work of body of someone else in something which so much kind of matters to me, works with me, I'm putting myself into this position of the observer or photographer, doctor or executioner, kind of taking myself apart of something that I feel I almost lived. And I had this very spontaneous idea to perform. So that was one of actually really like breaking points for my own approach to my own body, because I said I couldn't be even nude in front of my partner, but I kind of spontaneously decided to perform laying on the autopsy table, just covered with a transparent fabric. And I didn't really have a plan what I'm going to do. And I was expecting that all the audience is going to be very far from me because there was space. But we didn't arrange it. And at the end, I was laying there naked and all the audience was like around the table, literally looking like this at me, which was one of the most powerful moments in my life. Just this being totally exposed, but even though I was nude or naked and not prepared, I felt so strong and kind of that it's not really myself. And I totally improvised this piece that I was kind of speaking into eyes of every participant as if I'm telling them something about hysteria, but without words speaking, just opening my mouth. So if they would really pay attention, they would hear me. And the feeling that I had on this table of being in such a vulnerable moment, but actually something else almost acted through me, I felt also in creating this work or in writing of the text, or maybe like having my own body felt kind of something very natural and instinctual, maybe even in a way similar to what you are describing, that now I can use my form, this avatar, to say this story, which is kind of story of many. So I think I used it because this work is very deeply personal for me, even though it's very universal, but it felt like it's the step that I felt like I need to take. And it kind of is the next step, kind of helping me. I really feel it over the years, how my relationship to my own body, or seeing it also more as a medium for an idea or communication, is developing through putting more of this approach into my work. And I want to continue more. I want to make a performative piece out of this.
Okay, that's interesting. Maybe that could be also a question to all of you, how the next step of your projects is going to be, in how maybe you break out of the photography medium. But before that, I also want to pose the question of the process of finding your subjects to both of you. I mean, you touched a little bit upon the subject, like you said, they're not models, they're people you meet on the street. So how does that happen? Like, how do you create so much comfort for a random stranger to get undressed in front of your camera in the water?
Yeah. I wanted to add something on the previous matter because I think they're connected. I think a minority of photographers are comfortable photographing themselves. And I think it is almost, I started photographing myself as a sense of duty to myself, and also because for me, it makes you a more empathetic person as a director. So like if you haven't tasted it in your own blood in a way, how do you treat others? So for me, I did it as a, even though that at the beginning it might have not been as comfortable, but if I wanted to, you know, really lived what I preach, then I had to impose it on myself. And self-portraits, I think, became I saw them as love letters to myself. So I see them as more than just like, this is me looking cute. It's like, no, it's like forcing myself to look at myself in the mirror. And looking in the mirror, it's a big act when you really look at yourself in the mirror. So I just wanted to add that. And I think forcing myself to photograph myself, made me a more compassionate and empathetic just human being and photographer. So when I approach people, I give them the freedom to choose. I introduce myself, and if I meet them on the street, and I show them my work, and I give them my number, and I tell them, it's up to you to come to me if you like what you see. And it has come to the point that they want to be part of the work. They want to be seen in a beautiful light, or they want to be part of it. But for example, it depends on the subject. Like if it's just, I've been working with my first photo book, it's titled Agua, which is water in Spanish. So I had a subject matter. I was going to put people in the water. So I was looking for people who were both comfortable with water around the world and others who were petrified of water. But I give them the freedom to choose. Do they want to be part of the work? And I tell them my intentions, and then it's up to them. But I love to photograph people who are very unaware of the camera, people who are very surprised of, why are you choosing me? Those are my favorite people. So yeah.
In some way, I already answered, but just to organize a little bit of the storytelling of how I do this. The first 2 photos of this project are mine and my husband. I did, he's Spanish, very pink. And one of the reasons, the list of things, the reasons why I do this work is because people really ask me what will be the color of my children. And the reason why the 2 photos are us is because I thought in the first moment that will be between us. So the color will be between us. Then I went back to Brazil and I did the entire part of my family, not entire, but big part of my family. And for me, it was very interesting not just to have the image, but the conversation that I had with them, how they perceive themselves, how I perceive who they are. So those are the ones that I really invited because I was interested in hear them. And then I come back to Spain and I did my political family, all blonde with blue eyes. So for them, the concept of race and the conversation that I had in Brazil has no sense for them. So there are other conversations. So in that point, I decided to really put on Facebook, I'm trying to prove that what I learned when I was a child, that people are black and white, it's not true. Just come to my studio. And crazily, suddenly I have people that just came and joined. Oh, I really saw that. And I have this story. In my life happened that. Oh, I know someone. And blah. So the conversation was, for me, as important as create the image. So this is the way that it started to grow. So my process until now is exactly that. I do open calls when I work with, I just did one like less than 1 month ago that was in Brasilia, in Brazil. So we put an open call or in social networks or in mailing of the museum, and people sign up and they are the ones that appears and said, why are you here? And this is the way that happened most of the time. And sometimes I do a kind of push. There was an example that was in Chiasso in Switzerland. Amazing place, people crossing the border from Chiasso to Como every day. And in this case, I decided that the Italian class for refugees, the one that first arrived in the city, will be my studio. We'll have a conversation in the better Italian that we all had, and the ones that want can participate in the project. I have to understand that. I also invite people for the residence of elders to have a tea, talk a little bit with me, and the ones that want can join the project. The same I did in a workshop with kids between 10, 12 years old. Who wants? And there are people that want to participate. And I spend 3 days. We rent a store, empty store in the main street, and the ones that want so can join and be part of the project. Well, the big thing with that is that all these people that will never maybe speak one with another, living in the same small village, they were together searching for themselves in the wall and helping one another to really search for their portrait. So sometimes I try to push a little bit and make things happen to be able to this kind of magic happen.
Thank you. Maybe some of you new subjects are sitting in the audience. I think we will open up So if anyone wants to join in, ask a question, we have a microphone that can come to you, and we can call. There's a question. Over there, there's a hand.
Thank you. My question, first of all, thank you very much for the talk. My question is for Angélica. Why did you pick the nose? Is there a reason for that?
Yes, it's the part of the body that changes. When you're drunk, when you take so much sun, the guy that I always show as an example, Mr. T-shirt, and there are a lot of people that sunburned. So it's a place that I know that will change. When people ask, oh, I want my color, I said, I'm sorry, I can give you the color of the moments that we were together speaking about who we are. And maybe in summer, you will be a little bit more pinker than in winter. So what I freeze is the moment that we are together. So that's why I really choose a part that I know that will change. And I will add a layer. If you have so many colors in our body, why the different color of other is the thing that we use to dehumanize others? There is no sense on that. So that's why I choose this part of the body that I know that will change. Since of the beginning, especially because my husband is this kind of, my ex-husband is this kind of people that 5 minutes in the sun get a red as a lobster. It's something that was, so it has to be like that. And that's why I choose the nose.
Thank you.
Until we have the second question, I actually have a question that I prepared to you. And you already know I'm going to ask it, so you could think about it. I was wondering, when you took the first nude, and it can be unpublished, so it can be a private one as well. Like, when did you take your first nude? Yeah, I'm looking at you because I love your story.
I know you're looking at me. She asked this question when we were sitting down there, and we were all in deep reflection because we couldn't think of, like, when was the first time I took a nude photo. And I realized that I am almost sure, almost sure.
It's a good story.
No, it's a great story. So we're going to say is the first, but it's like 99% secure information. That the first nude photo I took was of my brothers, actually. And not when they were little. They were like fully semi-adult teenagers, like, I don't know, 19 and 20. And my father, I wanted them to be nude, and I used to shoot in black and white back then. So I wanted their bodies to just look like one solid black color. And it was going to be on a white background. And I asked my father to help me paint them. So it became a family project. So my father, who is an engineer with no artistic practice, was like, yes, we're going to do this. Fun fact, my father, even though he's so numeric and so rational, is like my biggest fan. So I told him, Dad, I want to place these nude bodies in like 2-meter tall wooden boxes and a giant wooden circle. Can you make that? And he was like, yeah, I'll talk to the carpenter. So my father got his carpenter to make these shapes and help me paint my naked brothers in the backyard. And my grandmother was watching. And mind you, again, this is happening in kind of a traditional conservative environment, but they always supported they just called them, Denisse's crazy ideas, and they were like my first models. So those were the first nudes that I took. It was a family affair.
I love that. I love that story because it actually reminds me of the story. And I told you I'm coming from a rather conservative Muslim background, and my sister had this textile art project where she was creating embroideries that looked like vulvas, and my mother hated it, but she also wanted to support her daughter in her art project, so she was stitching with her while really being angry and telling her not to do it and not to show it anywhere, but helping her stitch every part of it. So
it's kind of saying, I might probably never fully understand what is in your mind, but I believe in what you want to say. And that has been the stance of my brothers and my dad all my life. It's just like, I don't fully understand it, but I know that what you want to say needs to be said. And they have been the first ones. So, yeah.
Lovely. So I can also extend the question of the first nude to the audience if anyone wants to share or feels shy about asking a question. You can also share the story of your first nude. As I said, it can be an unpublished one because I'm sure there have been private ones. Like
I can tell you the last nude I ever took, and this is going to be an unorthodox, creepy answer, but I never really made a distinction, nude photography with photography. I was always photographing my friends' nude, and it wasn't a big deal. But when I was 14, I was part of a theater group in the suburbs of Stockholm, and we got together a few times a week, and there was one time where our teacher or instructor asked us if there was a body part that we didn't like on ourselves. And I said, I really don't like my ass. Little did I know that the next exercise was me just showing my ass to the whole theater group, and had to do so in silence for 5 minutes. And I wasn't allowed to like move, and they weren't allowed to say anything. So I stood there with my ass toward the audience for 5 good minutes, and that was like this snapshot that somehow just took away this idea of nudity, and it was no longer this loaded thing. Like I had a completely different relationship with my behind after that. So after that, I was like really keen on like that kind of just extinguished this notion of the nude for me. And I think I kind of been sort of trying to secretly recapture the feeling I had of that being like the most natural state I've been in, and there was nothing attached to it whatsoever. So anyway.
super interesting. I am kind of intrigued to share one as well, but let me look into the audience. Do we have another question? I cannot see the bag. If someone could help me from the team to check. Oh, is there a question? Yeah.
First, thank you very much. I'm really happy to listen to all of you. And I feel that in different ways, you're all committed to this that Audre Lorde called transforming silence into language and action, and actually going beyond the surfaces of photography, the surfaces of language and skin, and at the same time acknowledging that these surfaces create a lot of separation still. And I wonder if we are ready, and if we'll ever be ready, to dive beyond the surface and see each other and language and the planet from a deeper perspective, and actually get together in a more communal, collaborative way.
We are ready. No, I think it's just easy to say, but I think it's also like, for example, some of the topics that are in your work, it's not something I dealt in my work because it's not my story, let's say. And I think like in this way, we have to kind of exchange and learn from each other, from each other's work, from each other's experiences, I think, in order to have like the full understanding. But I think part of that kind of exchanging is making this change, hopefully. It's quite generic answer, maybe also.
I mean, I'm quite the radical optimist, so I say yes, like yes with capital letters all the time, like yes. And I think we do it in our daily, I don't think that we need to look at it as the big mission when we're all, all billions of us, hold each other. I think that we can do it every day, like literally, like with small steps and humanizing another human being, or being collective with a new person, or I believe in that kind of change, and that minute change. So I think that leads to the bigger change. So yes, I think we have it in us. I think everybody possesses the capacity to love and the capacity to shine light. I think that is inherent in every single human being. So I think it is in us. We just need to practice it, in my opinion.
I will quote Tupac Shakur twice. You can see that I'm more than 40 years old. And first, and I really love this one, is something that I repeat for me every day. I'm not going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's the reason why I continue to do what I do. And the second one that I really love, I don't know how to clean that shit. But if I continue to speaking about it, someone that know how to clean it will come and do it. So those are the two things that why I think that maybe there's a future.
But also you're doing one, like you're one person doing this thing that is including so many, and many will see it, and maybe together they can better clean the
So
shit
that's
up.
why I'm not going to change the world.
Yeah, but you are
But
kind
the
of
mind will be sparkling.
you are, I think like as artists often you, which can be sometimes a little bit hard also, that like, yeah, your work itself is not changing the world. Often also you are touching on topics which are so difficult or so deep that you cannot maybe always explain them. I think a lot of the artworks is more about posing the question, like also your work, your original question, like, is there like there isn't why, or like how you are kind of posing this question on everyone who sees your project, and then they have to think themselves, they have to kind of answer themselves based on what you are saying. This, which has been so much repeated, is so not true. So I think as artists sometimes it's more about like making this one spark for further thinking of people, like what's the world they want to create.
And I think also just keeping both art and comedy as sacred spaces. I think that's very important. I think seeing like what's happening, especially in the United States, now you see comics getting attacked on stage, like we see censorship in art. I think these are the two places where we really have to fight to let our voices be heard, no matter what they're saying.
One last chance.
Sorry, I wanted to add something to that. I think that you can show a message through your work, but I think your actions in your everyday life are louder. You can be a great artist that talks about love and be a shitty person. So I honestly don't give that much of a crap about what your work is about if you are not showing that in the way that you behave. So I think that is the bigger question. I think they two need to coexist. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. One last chance for the audience. Otherwise, I will pose my... Yeah? Okay.
I love all your work. It's beautiful. I have a question for each and every one of you. I just wanted to know, at this very moment, who is your favorite artist that you appreciate, and what medium do they work with?
This is such a hard question, right? Favorite artist at the moment, maybe.
For me, as a musician, I can think of two artists. One is a writer, one is a musician. The musician, he's called Kamasi Washington. He's an amazing jazz player. Actually, his music inspired me to create the music for that film. And his pieces, I mean, his music is just so visceral. It's like a journey. Each song is a journey. And I at least listen to it and repeat. I'm a big jazz fan. I would choose him. And he collaborates a lot with visual artists. And the other artist is, actually, I'm going to go back to the painter because of a very specific thing. Her name is, I forget her full last name. I will think of it after this. But her name is Lynette, and I saw her recently. She's a British artist, and she has some of the most raw portraits I've ever seen. And she paints, not from photographs, only from memory. And it was fascinating. And I went to her exhibition in Bilbao recently, and she didn't say much about her work. She just wanted it to be just like her work, very experiential, just like, I don't want to say much about these people. They come from mixtures of my memory. I want you to feel something when you see them. And she shared a playlist And
Was in the in Dubai.
yes,
Yes.
love her. And she shared a playlist, and it was just so like get into my head. And it was fascinating that she just did this out of her memory, these beautiful portraits. And she had a playlist to go with it. So for me, I could really feel or maybe play the music and look at what she was seeing while she was listening to something. So it was just felt like a full circle. So those are the two that I can think of right now.
Okay, something that came to my mind kind of immediately. I think it's always a very hard question because there are so many things coming up, but it's also like nice way to recommend something that you like or like kind of give credit to it. I will also say one writer and one artist or artwork. The writer is the book that I read recently and I keep on recommending it to everyone. It's from Silvia Federici and it's called Caliban and a Witch. It has also longer title. It's something like Body and Capitalist Accumulation, but it's very interesting book which actually poses a lot of these things we were discussing about race, body, also prostitution, witchcraft, and so on, into relation of kind of financial control. Very interesting book, I recommend. And the work which came to my mind immediately was, for me, the work of Tino Segal, which I saw in Palais de Tokyo, without knowing what's going to be there. If you are not familiar with his work, it's kind of performative work where the boundary between the artwork and audience is totally non-existent, let's put it that way. And it really touched me in a way because I think in artwork nowadays, it's so hard to kind of get rid of this spectator position and to really become part of it. And in this work, just a short description, it was basically that the performers were part of the audience and audience was part of the performance and you could enter anytime and they could exit anytime. And this was kind of building up until the point in Palais de Tokyo, which is a big museum, when the performance, which might have just been the visitors, this division was not there, took us to like black, totally dark room and everyone was dancing and touching each other like out of nowhere. And then you went to the next museum room and you continued. And for me, that was something like very special, which happened for me in the artwork. So yeah, maybe that.
I feel terrible. I'm going to need help from the audience. You're going to call me bluff, like I don't even know the name of my favorite artist. But he's a performance artist, Taiwanese. Can someone help here? He makes durational pieces for a year where he is.
Saw him.
Yeah, he had an exhibition here. Thank you. Please, can you just say it out loud? I'm going to go with that. Him.
There's an exhibition now at the Neue Nationalgalerie.
I believe it might still be up. So
it's there.
Can't see it, go see it. All there is left is documentation of his timepieces. They go on for a year, I think, all of them. This one is timepiece. He clocks in every hour on the hour and takes a photograph of himself, not leaving the space he's in. He spent a year being tied to his artistic partner, and they did everything together, but they were not intimate by any way. He spent a year living outdoors, not being able to go into buildings, you name it. I think he is currently doing a 7-year piece where he's not allowed to make art. So
13 years.
Oh, 13, sorry. But
is that funded?
It's almost like just feeling the concepts of what he's doing is like gives me the goosebumps and shivers. Like I don't really need to be there for it. But if you can go see the documentation, I can highly recommend it if it's still on display.
It is on display, so you should go watch it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's Berlin Art Week, so yeah, we already gave each other suggestions what to see next. Do you wanna?
I can choose one. And in photography, if I have to think about two persons that, in theory, are in a very traditional institution, but I think that they have a different point of view. Jael Martinez from Mexico, Isadora Romero from Ecuador, both are in Magnum. and they are really creating different things. And I think that from the photojournalism, we have to find new ways to tell stories, and I think that they are doing from South America. Painting, I was thinking about Maxwell Alexandre, that is from Brazil, and he's someone from favela community called the Rocinha, and a part of what he's doing international, that's amazing. He really created a pavilion, a museum in the community. So it's amazing how he's showing in the Palais de Tokyo and showing in the community exactly the same thing. So I love the work, and for me it's also important the process. A Dama Delphine Faudo, she's a photographer, performance from Brooklyn, and I'm a really fan of her work. And I can continue. Oh, and I love pop culture, so we can add in this layer when I really want to bring joy and jump in a pop cultural way. I love Beyonce, and I can't live without Rosalia. So both that are pop culture, but they are really, the beautiful thing is that Rosalia, for example, she's putting flamenco in places that people will never listen, and she's putting a lot of Latin American music that a lot of times rejected in places that people, I love this cross that, for example, she's doing. And I can continue saying a lot of things that I love that, as you can see, are completely different. I'm a very diverse person in a lot of ways.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the time. I think our time is nearly done. I just wanted to ask you one final question, and maybe you can give a really quick response, like a yes, no, or like maximum one sentence response. Because this exhibition, NUDE, wanted to bring female and female identifying photographers, I guess as a revolutionary or like a really forward thinking theme into this space. I'm wondering if you feel it's still that a topic that has to be framed like that? Like, do you feel we already have so many different perspectives on the nude that it's not provocative or revolutionary anymore? Or are we in the middle of unlearning what we talked about?
So what is the main question?
This is complex.
So I'm wondering if you would be invited to an exhibition like that, NUDE, female and female identifying photographers, next year, would you still feel like, oh yeah, this is something revolutionary? Or do you feel like this is something that is maybe already done and we need a different perspective on the nude?
I think it doesn't really need to be revolutionary to be necessary, because sometimes, even though probably this is not the first exhibition of this concept, I'm not aware, maybe it is, so sorry if it's not, but yeah, it's more about that this is something that still has to be addressed, and it will probably, hopefully it will not have to be addressed, but most probably it will have to be addressed. So I think it's more about how we have to kind of remind ourselves or look at the things at the current context. A lot of us also change the works that are exhibited in the show. So the show has, again, something new to offer, because I just know it from my own work, or probably also your works, how much I grew in the last 10 years and how differently I would respond to the topic. So I think as far as we keep kind of developing, there will be always something new to offer from this perspective. And I think it's very important to show this kind of female gaze on the topic of nude still nowadays, for sure.
So I would summarize it as this conversation still needs to be had, like we still have to have the conversation about what the nude can be and deconstruct the gaze that was so far on the nude. If you don't want to add anything else?
I think it's necessary. As long as people are uncomfortable in their own bodies, then it is necessary. And as long as people are confronted by seeing someone nude and art being made, then it's necessary. I also think that, one last thing, I do feel, and when you walk into the exhibition, there's a different way in which female identifying humans or women see the naked body. And I'm sorry, but historically you can go and watch a Newton exhibition. There's a different way, and it has not been shown enough, and it doesn't have to become a cliche. And it's different. It's like vulnerable and raw and sensitive, and it's many things, but it's also strong and sexual, and it is complex. So I think it's necessary. It's a different way of looking at the nude.
Thank you. Now we really want to go to the exhibition again. Thank you very much for the conversation and for listening.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, Julia, Denisse, and Angélica, and thank you, Moshtari, for this inspiring conversation. Our museum is open today until 10 p.m. So if you still haven't seen our shows, you can do that quickly now or on Thursday or any day after Thursday, September 14, when we have our great celebration and official opening of Fotografiska Berlin. Thank you so much.